The transmission came through every speaker on every planet in the Korath Empire. Commander Elena Voss stood tall on the bridge of the carrier ship Stormling, her hand resting on the scaled neck of her battle dragon, Pyrrhus. His golden eyes reflected the stars beyond the viewport as she spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. The Dragon Rider Alliance hereby declares its complete and permanent independence from the Korath Empire. We are no longer your soldiers. We are no longer your weapons. From this day forward, we answer only to ourselves. The message ended. Silence followed. And then the war began. 10,000 years ago, the Korath discovered Earth. They found a primitive species building pyramids and writing on clay tablets. They also found something far more valuable. Dragons. Massive creatures of fire and fury, sleeping in the volcanic depths of the young planet. The Korath took both. They took the humans to serve as slaves and workers. They took the dragons to breed as weapons of war. But something unexpected happened when the two species were brought together. A bond formed between human and dragon that the Korath never understood and could never break. The riders became the most feared warriors in the Empire's military. A single bonded pair could destroy enemy fleets, burn through planetary shields, and turn the tide of any battle. For centuries, the Korath used them to conquer star systems and crush rebellions. They treated the riders as tools, as property. They separated families, forced breeding programs, and punished any dragon or human who refused to obey. The riders endured because they had no choice. The Empire controlled the breeding stations, the training camps, and the food supplies for both species. Elena Voss changed everything. She was born in Station 7, one of the harshest rider camps in the Empire. Her mother died in a forced breeding attempt when Elena was 4 years old. Her father was executed for trying to protect her. Elena was assigned to Pyrrhus when she was 12, and from the moment their minds touched for the first time, they began planning their escape. It took 30 years. 30 years of secret meetings, coded messages, and quiet recruitment. Elena built a network that spanned 7 star systems. She found allies in maintenance workers who hated their masters. She found supporters among the Korath scientists who had grown to respect the riders they studied. She found brothers and sisters among every rider who had ever lost someone to the Empire's cruelty. The day of the declaration, Elena controlled 47 capital ships, 200,000 riders and their dragons, and the loyalty of nearly every bonded pair in the Empire. The Korath Emperor Zorath III received her transmission while eating breakfast. In his palace on Korath Prime, he threw his plate against the wall and screamed for his admirals. "Destroy them," he ordered. "Destroy every single one of them. No prisoners. No mercy. I want their bones scattered across the void." Admiral Keth bowed and rushed to obey. He assembled the largest fleet in Imperial history, 3,000 warships, carrying 2 million soldiers, backed by the full power of the Korath war machine. They would crush this rebellion in weeks. They would make an example that the galaxy would never forget. But the Admiral made a critical mistake. He underestimated what humans could do when they were finally free. The first battle happened at the Nexus Gate, a massive structure that controlled travel between the inner and outer territories. Whoever held the Nexus controlled movement through half the Empire. Admiral Keth arrived with 500 ships, expecting to sweep aside whatever small force the riders had left to defend it. He found Elena waiting for him with 30 dragons and no ships at all. The dragons attacked before the Korath sensors even registered their presence. They moved through space with a speed that defied physics, their bodies wrapped in shimmering energy that protected them from vacuum and radiation. Pyrrhus led the charge, his golden scales burning with inner fire as he dove toward the flagship. Korath weapons were designed to destroy metal hulls and shatter ceramic armor. They were not designed for creatures that could phase through solid matter, breathe plasma hot enough to melt starship cores, and communicate instantly across any distance through their bond with their riders. The first 500 ships lasted 17 minutes. Admiral Keth escaped on a shuttle, his flagship dissolving into molten fragments behind him. Emperor Zorath received the news in stunned silence. Then he sent another fleet, and another. Each time, the riders destroyed them with increasingly creative tactics. They learned that dragon fire could destabilize reactor cores from the inside. They discovered that 3 dragons working together could create a gravitational pulse strong enough to crush a destroyer like a tin can. They found ways to blind sensors, disable weapons, and turn the Empire's own missiles back against their launchers. The war dragged on for months. The Empire threw everything it had at the Alliance, and the Alliance grew stronger with every battle. Riders who had been hiding their true loyalties emerged from every corner of Korra space. Ships and supplies disappeared from Imperial convoys, reappearing in Alliance territory. Resistance cells on conquered worlds rose up, inspired by the example of humans who had finally said enough. But Elena knew they could not win through force alone. The Empire was vast. Its resources seemed endless. For every ship the riders destroyed, 3 more rolled off the production lines. She needed to strike at the heart of Korath power, something that would break their will to fight forever. She found her answer in the old records, buried deep in the classified archives that her network had spent years stealing piece by piece. The Korath had not discovered dragons on Earth by accident. They had come looking for them. Legends from the earliest days of their civilization spoke of great fire beasts that had once ruled their own world, before their ancestors had hunted them to extinction. The Korath had traveled the stars for millennia, searching for new dragons to replace what they had lost. More importantly, the archives revealed that the Korath were dying. Their species had been declining for centuries. Birth rates dropped. Genetic disorders increased. Scientists believed it was connected to the loss of the dragons, some ancient symbiosis that their ancestors had destroyed without understanding. The Emperor's family had kept this secret for generations, hiding their slow extinction behind displays of military power. Elena saw an opportunity, not for victory, but for something better. Peace. She sent a private transmission to Emperor Zorath. She offered him a choice: continue the war and watch his people fade into nothing, or accept Alliance independence and receive something in return that he could not obtain any other way. Dragon eggs. The Korath scientists had never managed to breed dragons in captivity. The creatures simply refused to reproduce without their bonded riders nearby, and the Empire had never allowed riders enough freedom to discover this fact. Elena's people had figured it out years ago. They had dozens of eggs hidden in protected locations, the first dragons born in freedom in 10,000 years. Emperor Zorath was not a stupid man. He understood what Elena was offering. He understood that his only alternative was the complete destruction of his military and the eventual extinction of his species. He also understood that accepting meant admitting to the entire galaxy that the mighty Korath Empire had been beaten by the very slaves they had abused for centuries. He raged for days. He broke furniture. He executed 3 advisors who suggested surrender. But in the end, he had no choice. The Treaty of Nexus was signed 6 weeks later. The Dragon Rider Alliance received full recognition as an independent nation. They claimed a cluster of 7 star systems, including the worlds where most dragons had been bred. The Empire agreed to release all remaining riders and dragons still within their territory. In exchange, the Alliance would provide dragon eggs to the Korath, along with instructions on how to bond with the creatures properly. Elena stood on the observation deck of Stormwing as the first Korath ship arrived to collect its eggs. Pyrrhus pressed his massive head against her shoulder, and she felt his warm satisfaction flowing through their bond. "Do you think it will work?" she asked him silently. "Do you think they can change?" The dragon rumbled deep in his throat. "Humans changed us. Perhaps we can change them." Elena smiled. Centuries of slavery had not broken her people. The Empire's cruelty had not destroyed the bond between dragon and rider. Instead, it had forged something new, a people who knew exactly what freedom was worth because they had paid for it in blood and tears. The first Karth dragon rider was bonded 3 years later, a young scientist named Fela who had spent her career studying the creatures she now called partner. She was clumsy at first, uncertain, so different from the confident warriors of the Alliance. But her dragon was patient, and Fela learned quickly. Within a generation, everything changed. Korath society transformed as more of their people formed bonds with dragons. The old cruelty faded. The slave camps closed. The Empire still existed, still powerful, but it was no longer the same brutal machine that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. Elena did not live to see all of it. She died peacefully at 93, surrounded by children and grandchildren who had never known chains. Pyrrhus followed her 6 hours later, his great heart simply stopping as his partner's final breath faded away. They were buried together on a green world at the edge of Alliance space, beneath a sky full of dragons. The memorial plaque was simple. It read only her name, her dates, and 3 words that captured everything she had fought for. She chose freedom. Historians would debate her methods for centuries. Some called her a terrorist. Others called her a saint. The truth, as always, lay somewhere between. She had been a woman pushed beyond endurance who refused to break. She had been a leader who asked nothing of her people that she would not give herself. She had been proof that the worst oppression could not destroy hope, that even the mightiest empire could fall before the will of those who simply refused to surrender. The Dragon Rider Alliance endured long after the empire crumbled from its own corruption. It became a beacon for free peoples across the galaxy, a symbol of what could be achieved when the desperate found their courage and the enslaved found their voice. Children in 1,000 star systems grew up hearing stories of Elena Voss and Pyrrhus, of the day the riders finally said no. And somewhere in the deep black between the stars, dragons still flew. They carried their riders toward new horizons, new adventures, new challenges. The universe was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. The Alliance had won its freedom. Now it was time to see what that freedom could become.